Welcome along at the back of the stand at Philiphaugh for another edition of A View from the Commentary Box, and this is a Border League special where I'm joined with Jim Harold, who is the Border League president, and also Atholl Innes, who is a very well-known journalist in the region. So they've got their views and their own tasks this season for the Border League, in which has been a very turbulent year for the competition, the oldest rugby union league in the world. But first, Jim, we'll come to you. It's obviously an honour as well being the Border League president for this season, but it has been a very difficult season so far.
Absolutely, it's been difficult, but only really because of the fixture congestion towards the end of the season. Otherwise, it's actually been quite enjoyable.
And that is probably the thing, is the fixture congestion. We've spoke about it here time and time again. I do have my opinions. I was speaking to a friend of mine on the way down here. He has his opinions as well. But how do we make sure that the Border League survives, or is it a fact that does it need to survive in these modern eras? How do we go about that? Because it is at the moment it's sort of lacking that real oomph to find its feet in the kind of national landscape.
I think it needs to survive. I think there is a will for it to survive. You mentioned that it's the oldest club league competition in world rugby, and that's a part of rugby history. So we are the custodians of that history, and it's something that we need to cherish and something that we need to make work. At the moment, it's blatantly obvious that it's not working, and the reasons for that are also obvious. It's about basically when the games are played, too many games being played, and we have to be honest, and we have to give priority to the National League competitions. And the Border League needs to support the border clubs in those competitions. So you've got, for example, Hawick at the moment going into the playoffs, and you've got Gala going for promotion. So the Border League clubs need to support that. As Stuart mentioned earlier on tonight, Gala could get into the Premiership next year. We would have 4 Borders clubs in the Premiership, and that can be nothing but good for the game in the Borders.
Totally. The Borders is the one of the central heartbeats of rugby in the national landscape. And Atholl, you'll know more than probably any of us that will probably be here this evening. You probably watched a lot more minutes of Border League action than probably the whole stand combined. So what are your thoughts on the Border League, the way it was and the way it is now?
Well, I think the way it was much more relevant to clubs who were taking part. I think the most important thing about the Border League is not just the rugby, but not teams together, but the fact that it's a spectator sport. So you can't beat any better games than Selkirk, Kelso, Gala against Melrose, and that's what brings people out. And they come out and support these games, they'll come out and support the bar and the refreshments that are put on during the game. But I think the clubs have got to get together, as they did in the past, and decide this is your Border League fixtures. Play them when you can. If they can't play them, they have to play at that specific time. But I think at the end of the day, the fixture secretary is very concerned that we may lose this Border League, and that would be a disaster. It's the oldest league in the world. People just shrug their shoulders and say, what, so what? But my other main concern, and not just the Border, is club rugby in general. I feel personally that, the SIU don't give us the support we need. I don't know financially. I just say, you never see it getting talked about much through Murrayfield. Also, I think that, the clubs have got to do something more about that. And I think, as a journalist, they've got something to look at their own newspapers and say, look, they're not covering the Border League rugby or any club rugby for that matter, as they used to do in the past. There used to be reports of every game, Premiership, whatever it was. But now that doesn't exist. All you get now is a 2 or 3 paragraphs for one guy summarising all the games. And if people want to watch it or see information, they've got to go onto Facebook or one of these internet sections to get the result and find out what's happened. So I think we've got to stand up and fight for it at this very minute. This is the end of the season. As Jim said earlier on, there's so many fixtures now in the Premiership as well that and getting them played. But most clubs nowadays have got facilities, under soil heating and games that can be played. And if we get a decent winter, as we've had this year, most games should have been played anyway. And I think, if the games aren't played, or if they are played, then they should get together and make sure they are played. And that if it's a draw, they play to a finish.
See, I think that's good, because everything that we've spoken about so far, we've never ever said COVID, which I think would be a really easy out for us to blame the Border League problems now on COVID, because they're not. But ex-Border League President John Thorburn did say that the clubs need to decide what they want to do. In his own words, he was saying that the clubs need to decide now. I would just like to know what constitutes what the clubs decide. Like, so what is the club's decision, and what does that encompass? Is that what is best for money, supporters, for the people, the sponsors that are going to be there? Is it for the players? Is it for the coaches?
Well, you wonder sometimes whether the clubs ever get together to discuss the Border League. Are there meetings with presidents of various clubs? Jim can tell you that or not, to discuss, well, Border League games coming up, they have to be played. They're important to the local clubs. And as I said earlier on, the support come out for these games, local derbies, are second to none. But we must just have them and have them played. And it'll be interesting to see just, how many turn out tonight? Oh, okay, it's a wet night and it's Kelso and we're opposition tonight, but it's still playing for a place in the final. And against Hawick, who won't like the idea of not having to play Gala next week. But that's the way it is. Gala pulled out, and when you get Gala pulling out the league, one of the top teams, because they've got too many fixtures, you can understand that. But I know that the Gala seconds also pulled out the Peebles seconds game the week before. So there is an obvious problem in getting players to play. And I think one of the problems also has been the fact that with COVID, etc., we can blame that, but so many players drifted off from the game, taking up other sports, other interests, and rugby become secondary.
Yeah, and I think that's when clubs need to do their job of being a community club and welcoming people back in. And I think the Borders has actually survived most of that. I think other clubs are a little bit different, but out with the Borders. But one thing that Jim, that we're touching on there is the fact that that the Border League has changed. It's a different landscape. How you get the results, how people digest their information. Is it a matter of Border League modernising it? Is it a matter of us trying to not go back to what we think used to work, but trying to figure out something new? Like, what is the plan now to try and revamp the Border League? Is there a plan in place?
I think the word you're looking for is I-beam. But like I said, we have to be realistic. The Border League to survive has to fit in better with the National League structure. You're asking is there a plan? I'm actually putting a paper together at the moment to put in front of the next Border League meeting to answer Atholl's question. The Border League meet about 4 or 5 times a year. All the clubs come together, they're all represented. We've been pretty poor in the past at getting things done and making decisions, but one of the steps forward this year has been the introduction of a better system of making decisions so that things are put in writing, they go back to the clubs, and then they come back and the decision's made. And that's actually worked quite well this year. In terms of taking it forward, the one thing's absolutely certain is that we can't keep going the way we are. Something needs to change. So
what's the priority? Because the Border League, the national competition is pretty well structured. We've always got call-offs. It's a winter sport. What is the priority? Is the priority maintaining history? Is the priority supporting clubs? Or is there player welfare in there as well? Because I think adding more fixtures, I think the Border League has got a system that would work because our border teams for years and years to come will still be at the top table in national rugby. We can almost play a Border League which is exciting without adding any fixtures. If anything, we'd be taking them away. We could play double headers. It wouldn't necessarily be... We could talk about that at a different time. But there's a lot of things. Like my thing is, when I used to play rugby, I used to hear all these Border League meetings, and the representative from my club, Peebles at the time, their view would never highlight my view. Mm-hmm. I was quite a competitive player who had high aspirations for my club, and a lot of the time their aspirations did not match mine. So when I'm asking what's the foresight for the Border League, who is it in the best interest of, and what is the priority? The
player welfare always has to take priority. You mentioned COVID earlier, that we've not used that as an excuse. That would be wrong, because as we come into next season, we're going to have the National Cup competition to deal with, and there's already talk in respect of representative rugby at the end of the season. So that's just adding more into the season. Going back to how we can revamp the competition. It's not just a question of getting fixtures played or getting the Border League fixtures played amongst the National League structure. It's when we play those fixtures. If you look at the problems we have in terms of call-offs, all of those call-offs have been basically from November through to now, to March.
Now, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. We need to get the fixtures played earlier in the season. I've got an idea in mind of how we can make that happen, and the other option we need to look at is playing fewer fixtures. Again, there are various options that are available to us to achieve that. Now, I can't say too much at the moment because it's only right that I put this to the Border League clubs first, and I'll be quite happy to come back after that and explain to you what we've discussed and what we've decided. But the one thing's absolutely certain: it does need to change, and it needs to incorporate the things you've mentioned: history, player welfare, and also achieving something that will basically help to promote rugby within the borders.
Yeah, I think it needs to be something to make it sustainable. I think I do think the borders rugby mostly, apart from maybe the likes of Hawick Quins who've obviously not been able to fulfil fixtures this year, but I think we've been relatively fortunate to deal with the recent pandemic, to come out the other side relatively okay. A lot of young players playing for both sides tonight. But Atholl, what would your ideas be for a revamped Border League? Do you have an idea of the way you would like to see it done, or do you just want to see something done and you really don't want to kind of offer any opinions?
Oh no, we'll never stop offering something. I think what Jim says there, except a pint of beer, of course, but I think the main thing is the things Jim said. I think the idea is to try and get Border League programme drawn up with the clubs, and then you say, right, we're going to play these pre-season, to get it off the ground. So if you're playing games in August before the national or the Premiership starts, you get several Border League games off the way. The weather's good. There's midweek games that you can play then. And I think if the clubs can agree to that, we're then into the season as a whole, and you just keep your fingers crossed that there won't be any bad weather to host the rest up. But there are fewer Border League teams now. Do you play one game only? Or do you play home and away? Do you play pole? I think the play pole system's quite good, but not good when you get teams like Peebles and Gala, of all teams, pulling out because they've got so many National League fixtures to play, and I can understand that. And injuries, as Jim says as well, is another worry. Most clubs seem to have a horrifying list of injuries at the moment. And
I think that's it. I think it comes down to player welfare as well, because Peebles have used an abundance of players, and I'm probably one of the most critical people of my ex-club. But to put some of these players against some of these players playing Premiership rugby, it's just not safe.
No, it's unsafe. It's totally unsafe. And to get young boys coming in to fill in because of injuries, and then going up to play somebody like Curry or Marr, who are really strong at all levels, it's a long balance for a start.
Yeah.
But I still maintain that if you can get some Border League games off at the start of the season, and then look at the vacant days, if there are going to be any vacant days, to try and get the rest played during the season itself. But I do believe that we must continue with this. The fixture secretary of the Border League said that we're just a joke. The Border League's just a joke, and they'll have to get something organised. Well, over to you boys. Let's do it.
Sorry, could I come in there, Dale, just to pick up on a point? You're talking about pre-season rugby. What I'm proposing, or going to be proposing to the Border League, would result in everything bar the final being played by Christmas. And those are the windows of opportunity before the fixtures get too congested. This tonight is a classic case in point, and I think as president of Selkirk I have to hold my hands up and say that when we played Kelso here pre-season, that should have been the Border League fixture. Had that been the case, this would have been done and dusted, out the way. Selkirk would also won the game and won the tie, but that's neither here nor there. But we need to look at pre-season, and we need to look at the period of the autumn internationals and the run up to Christmas, where some of the clubs like to play their games on Boxing Day. We need to get to a stage where a certain level of a certain amount of games have been played by that stage, so that it makes the run in easier.
Does that involve any midweek games or all weekend?
That is too early to say. Well, basically,
I did try.
It's too early to say. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
No, I think it's really. I have my opinions, and just they differ to both of you, and I think that's the beauty of the Border League. I think you've got three completely different people here with their own opinions, and it shows there is still an appetite. I was speaking to my friend I used to play rugby with. He's a few years older than me. He still had an appetite, and he's got a view in it. There is an appetite for the Border League. It's just the fact that the national game has grown so much in Scotland that we do need to work hard to try and maintain it. And I really wish you all the success, Jim, in your paper, and I hope that you do come up with a really positive solution that benefits clubs, supporters, players, and just the future of Scottish rugby as well. And I hope we're here to cover games for a long time yet. So thank you very much for your opinions, Atholl and Jim. It was a good chat. We're still friends, I hope, as well, which is great. So but yeah, that was the opinions there of Jim Harold, who's Border League president, and Atholl Innes, a local journalist as well, who's never short of an opinion on the Border League. But it's great to see that there's still an appetite for making Borders one of the strongest areas and the beating heart of rugby in Scotland, and hopefully come next year we'll see a good plan for how we can make this more sustainable in the future.